my opinion, right, is this Circles for Beginners, which is probably one of our better books in terms of teaching some of the topics I'm going to cover real quick in here today. So if something zips by, this is the demonstrator guide. Fun reading, all right? But it has really, really good stuff in it. And the other one is Calling the Circle by Christina Baldwin. That book, I would heavily advise everybody to get the audio version or the actual book. I know Arnold ordered a couple more copies. It really covers the circle way out of the context of therapy, right? Or a process for people that have some kind of issue with themselves, right? It's one of the best books going, right? And we use some of their language, like hosting a circle. That's directly from there, okay? We used to call it the facilitator, but even that implied, right, that there was somebody was a designated adult, right? It's more, leadership changes, right? So you'd be, like you host a dinner party, okay? You don't facilitate it. You host a circle. I mean, it's got some good vocabulary, and it takes it into the context of the business world. And it teaches everything we're trying to teach people here in terms of form, which we're not going to get into all that, right? On how a circle is physically set up, the importance of that. I think most of you know that, right? This is Buckminster Fuller, the integrities, the points where strength are formed, right? Like if you've seen the geodesic dome, these were big in the 60s, they're still around. Or Pauline, engineering, right? Where the points on bridges connect, they look weak, but they're super strong, right? So this is just a quick diagram we use on showing, this could be all positive or negative, right? In a group, if you were able to capture what's going on. So there'll be a couple, again, all this stuff is in this book. Circles for Beginners. This could be yours for $74.95. All right. So, okay. It's a community building activity. Again, this shows our connection to 12 steps. Always remember, therapeutic communities grew out of 12-step. Okay? And the fellowship 12-step, and took it an extra mile, right? And then teaching in therapeutic communities, which Amity is, has evolved even beyond that. All right? So there's some certain depth which we'll get into it. So just like community, groups, when they're done well, accelerate personal growth. Okay? They're one of the things that promote a ton of things, but a simple way of looking at it is this whole community, large frame, accelerates personal growth. And we used to say what you could do at a therapeutic community in a year, it would take you over 5 years in 101 individual counseling, psychotherapy, right? In a year you can do what would take you 5 years in psychotherapy to do. So it accelerates the process of growth. Okay, when they're done right. When they're done good. It creates sanctuary and helping the remembering of one's narrative, so you can rewrite that narrative, right? You got to come out of denial. It helps overcome denial. If it's done well, it helps a person overcome prejudice. If it's done wrong, it can help a person reinforce their own prejudice. Right? Everything can work in reverse. Always remember that. Amity circles have always been way different than most people's experience with circles. In lots of little ways. So we're trying to develop emotional literacy and just connecting between people. You know, a connection happens in a circle more than a meeting, right? Okay? If you do a meeting, you know, with somebody across the table, you know, like a business meeting, it kind of sets up a division, right? Like a me against you, okay? Or some oppositional forces. You set up a circle, it totally changes the energy. Just that form of the circle, right? And you can trace it all the way back to the invention of fire, okay? You know, when cavemen and cavewomen were getting together, when they started going from tribes to meeting in smaller and smaller groups, and vocabulary was beginning, right? It promotes a whole different thing. It's an antidote to alienation. I mean, in our field, you know, drug abuse is a manifestation of alienation, a way we make ourselves foreign to other people, or we can't handle our reality. So we change our reality by getting high or drunk. So good groups will help somebody overcome that, right? So this is just why, not to put anybody to sleep, why groups are so important to do, okay? It's an emotional classroom, not a cognitive classroom. And then it emphasizes authenticity, personal authority versus vested. This is a simple, have you guys seen this diagram? All right. It's kind of a, you know, turning us into little snowmen or whatever they're called, right? Most people communicate head to head, right? Like some circles could be what I call the talking head circles. Everybody's very rational, no emotions are taking place. It's kept on a very rational field. This shows more, this says that's good intercourse. I can feel it, emotionally meaningful conversation, people connecting, right? Just like, you know, when you're in a circle, you kind of know instinctually, like, man, this person's being real right now. Or, wow, this person's as phony as a $3 bill, man. Okay? They got about as much depth as a credit card. You know, a piece of plastic. So it encourages the good ones, but you want to get the whole thing going, head to head, gut to gut, that connection to people, right? Making that connection. So that's another reason. So there's probably 50 good reasons why we do circles, right? If you go to a sweat lodge, you're sitting in a circle. You're not sitting in a square, you're not sitting in a triangle, you're not sitting in rows. It's supposed to be open between you and everybody involved. Spirit and Mother Earth. Nothing covering it up. Okay. So again, this is more on decreasing alienation and isolation and teaching people to do some of that up there. I remember my first group to this, well, the first group was two guys yelling at each other, and I thought, holy shoot, they're going to start fighting, right? This is when I was at Casa de Vida. The groups were very, in the old days of therapeutic communities, the louder the group, the better the group. Okay? So it was extremely loud. And I thought, it scared the hell out of me, right? I really thought they were going to jump up and start fighting. And they did. And it blew my mind. And then I saw them out group joking with each other. And I thought, wow, this place is an insane asylum. But then, when I was able to talk to the group, actually listening to another guy talk, and he was saying my story, it gave me the courage to put that little part of my story out there. And I didn't feel so freakish, like I was the only one. Right? I really thought I was the only one that felt that or did some of the sins I did that other guy was talking about. So, I'm going to go to my next presentation, but another key word for circles, I know it's not new to you, is How do you in your own circle, and that's the challenge, right? And how do you build sanctuary? How do you build a place where the truth can be spoken? Whatever that truth might be. You know, and I've spent all of my adult career, 40 years studying group dynamics from the time I was a newcomer. We had to study it, right? And no matter how much you study all the dynamics that are at play, you could never really, and you could guide them, you know, and set the stage for certain things, but you really never know what is going to jump out, because one person could take such a risk with something and change the whole flavor of the circle. I mean, you can't, I've never been able to predict it, no matter how much I thought I knew logically. That's one of the fascinating things about circles. You know, that certain energy will take place, and we're so fortunate at Circle Tree Ranch because we have the space other Amity campuses don't have. Like Law and Prada, our women's community, they have no group rooms. They got a couple real little bigger than sound booth. You know, you can fit about 5. They got to walk down the street to their group room, right? Or Amistad has so many 170 guys, they don't have very many group rooms. So we have a luxury here that other people, when they come out, you know, at Amityville to visit, they're envious of. You know, we've spent a lot of time making them as nice as possible and setting up the forums. So, and we know too that groups foster post-traumatic growth in addition to healing. Into healing generational trauma, family generational trauma, all kinds of trauma. Okay? Now remember, I'm going to use this because this isn't in there. This is how I look at it. This was a group, because group has, it's multi-dimensional. So red spot groups are way up here. They're kind of way up at the surface. All right? And this thing goes all the way down here to some things we're not even conscious of. Okay? That are bubbling around, and then, you know, there's just kind of layers to it depending on the group of people in there. So, you know, let's say, you know, red spots could be like all these chairs in this room, right? Like, for me to connect, if I'm standing over here by White Cloud, to connect with Pauline over there, we got all this clutter between us we got to clear up. Right? Okay? Or if I try to give Melina a hug from here, and she's trying, right, we got to say what these two chairs are in between us, so to speak. So this happens in our relationships, our friendships. You know, it happens in marriages, right? You get these little, you know, Mark, you never take the trash out. You know, you never, I gotta work all day too. Why am I the one always having to cook dinner? You know, I'm not your mother, right? These unspoken little things. So red spots are kind of a surfacey thing. So if you're in what I call a freestyle group, okay, or if you ping around anywhere, the first little bit is you want to clear up the red spots in the room. You don't want the whole room to be a red spot. I've been in those. I was with a group of guys one time. Okay, we whooped and hollered for 24 hours. All right? It was never ending. Okay? I was in there with a bunch of guys from Synanon. They had resentments and red spots from the 60s. Okay, from when they were all there, right? And I have scooped them all up in various degrees of disarray and brought them to Amity when she's building Amity, right? And helped clean them up. And oh my God. And we left that 24 hours not feeling, we didn't know each other any better at all. If you're in a group, everybody should know everybody a little bit better than when they enter the room, when they leave the room. But all we did was sling red spots at each other, right? And these red spots with these guys are 20 years old. And you would have think they happened yesterday on the flagstone. Okay? So they could go pretty deep. So this next slide is the drawing, right? Good feelings, bad feelings. All the conscious stuff. I used to draw like this. Okay? This is our psyche, our head. Right? Okay? Entry points, exit points. This is all the clutter. Okay? In between, man. You got all this clutter. Like right now, all this stuff I'm saying just goes in one ear and out the other. Because there's no room in there, man. I'm trying to give this early information and there's all this other stuff. It's hard to retain it and listen to it, right? So you want to, in a group, you're trying to cathart. It comes from the Greek word catharsis. It means to cast out. You want to cast this out. All right? So in a red spot group, sometimes this starts to happen, right? When they're not expressed. Right? They start cluttering our view of the world. Okay? Everything we're looking at, because we got all this stuff. You know, it could be somebody just died and we didn't deal with it in our family, right? It doesn't have to just be mundane issues. It could be deeper stuff. But the key word here is stuff you're conscious of. It's up top. It's not buried. It's fresh, and you're aware of it. Okay? They could be. It's like when it's easy to kind of spot when somebody's lying around here, right? Because you can give them simple things to do and they can't do it. They just can, and they'll give you long, elaborate explanations of why it wasn't done. It's because their head isn't in the game. It's on all whatever. Okay? It's on, it could be just worrying about Jesus, man. How is my family going to pay the rent with me here? I was the one paying the rent. Even though it was with dope money, I was still paying the rent. Okay? It could be that, or it could be, you know, when somebody ends up on the Cupid report, right? They're totally obsessed, right, with somebody, okay? And that somebody becomes their entire amity. So they can't focus and do simple things. So a good group is you kind of get through all this. And then you start making room for like, wow, I'm starting to feel a little bit grateful. I'm starting to be able to develop an attitude of gratitude. I don't have all this muck. The old days it was called an encounter group. All right? Where you encounter each other and all this stuff. Okay, that's kind of an old word, right? But a free-flowing, freestyle group is a red spot. All right, it's more fluid, it bounces around, and a certain, you know, we used to say, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes, folks. Let's get our red spots out, man. It doesn't even matter. Sometimes you could have everybody do them all at once, okay? If anybody's listening or not. It's like, get it out. You know? Get it out. Have a good bellow, you know? Whatever it is, man, find your voice, get it out. Then there's room for something else to happen. Okay, just let it flow. So it's just one level of the group. Okay, if it just stays there the whole time, then you got a contract. Then the group, consciously or unconsciously, doesn't want anybody to talk about their story. They want to just stay stuck on their resentments, right? I used to talk to somebody here. I said, man, your whole group stays on whether they went to the store or not. Okay? The whole group's about resentments, right? That's not good. They're taking you on a trip. You got to control that thing and flip it around. Okay? You can get that out of the way, then all right, now we're going to move forward because the time is precious. Any questions on So it's a kind of a group, right? You know, you might go to your lodge and say, okay, we're going to take 20 minutes, let's clear the air. Say what you got to say to whoever's in the room. Also remember, in circles, if somebody's got an issue with somebody here and they're not in the room, don't spend your group on it if they're not in the room. Because that spreads prejudice. It spreads rumors, and it's a group tactic. Now, you can talk about your mom. She's not in the room. We might not be able to get her in the room. But if there's somebody living here, you got to get in the circle, go to your curriculum coordinator, or your demonstrator's got to say, well, I got to get Mabel Bob in here with Mary, man. You know, because they're both off in separate corners in the community spreading their stuff. Does that make sense? So sometimes you got to gently guide somebody away from that. Okay, the next kind of group is drill question groups. Now, these are pretty much what everything here is probably going to say, right? Okay? There's no feedback. They're good because everybody has to participate. You get in a free-flowing group, especially if it's over 6 or 7 people, some people can hide in the corners, right? The verbal-dominated people bogart all the time, okay? Or maybe one person becomes what I call the group trash can. It always goes on them all the time. You can predict it, right? You know, or you have what we call I won't get into that. The good thing about this is when we went into the prisons, or you're getting newcomers to group, I think the best way is you introduce them to sitting in a circle with drill questions. That's probably the safe thing. When we went into all the prisons, right? Or when I was working at Donovan, we introduced the drill question group first, not the red spot. Because we'd just be up there, sit down, you know? It would be too volatile. They just had to learn to sit in a circle, which they had a very hard time doing. They always wanted to push their chairs. Men love to do this, right? They want to push their chairs all the way to the wall in any room. When we were in Texas, we had to buy round rugs to put the chairs on because it was just not working. Sheila and I worked with Sheila. She was the director, right? And we got those round rugs that work perfect, man. But before that, because we they just slide them all the way, you know, they want to rock back. Hey, you got to keep your feet on the floor. Let's sit in a circle. It took a while just to get them to do that. The drill questions were safe. You could write them any way you want, right? In terms of what you want to, you know. You could do them just to introduce people to, like get acquainted, you know, simple questions, et cetera, et cetera. But everybody answers the same question. And then as a host, you got to know, you know what, we might have to group later on. They started to get into it, I had to switch the group. That's the trickiest thing about drill questions. If somebody gets upset, if you're doing drill questions and the time, you got to keep moving it, man. And then you got to come back around out of drill question mode, right? Okay, stand up, switch chairs, now we're going to get back into it. Pick up where you left off. They will pick up where they left off. But that's the most awkward time, I think. It was for me. It's like, oh man, they're even getting emotional. Time's up, oh boy. Next. Okay? So, it will happen. But you're just generally just surfacing information you're not going to get somebody's mind right in drill questions. Okay? But you could always just change the flavor. Everybody get up, change chairs. Okay, now we're in a freestyle group. Mary, what's going on, man? Because that question rattled you. Or Harry, man. What the hell? You took us to Mars on your answer. You didn't answer the question. Okay, well, why is that, hard for you to answer? So this gives you the norms. And you can do them over fun things. In terms of just getting people, That's what I like about them, because you can just do them about all kinds of stuff. Have you heard this expression, turret style? A turret like on a tank? Okay? So when you're doing turret style, it's, this person starts and the one sitting next to them, you go this way, right? We don't want to do that. We want to mix it up. This person starts, they pick this person. You don't know when your chance is going to come. Doing it the other way, we call it turret. All right, you Kilo, you Ashley, you Adrian, right around the room. That's turret style. Okay. Drill questions is also called a drill because it's an exercise, not just in talking, in terms of listening. Listening to what the person's saying and listening to what they're not saying. So remember that. So it isn't just about me sharing with Lena, it's about she's listening, especially if you're a demonstrator, right? And you listen like, well, man, I know Fred over here, I know Lena, I know a little bit. Why didn't she say that? I know that's bothering her. She went to channel 13. We want channel 2. So you're really trying to listen. You're watching body language, all that kind of basic group stuff. But it's the safest way to let people go. That's how we did it in the prisons. And we didn't start talking about your mom, talk about the worst sin you committed on earth. It was more like, what was the time in your life you were the most successful? What makes you happy? Right? What's your favorite color? What do you do for fun other than cook meth? Okay, and rob people. Right? If you weren't in Thugville, what do you do when you're not in Thugville? And it's safe question. Okay, talking circles. Okay. Who was moved more? What object do you pass around now? When you're in talking, what is this generation using?
A hockey stick.
Huh?
Oh, a hockey stick?
Yeah, there's got to be an object, not a microphone.
Feather.
A feather, a talking stick, something symbolic for that circle. But it's an object. If I talk, right, and then somebody else is moved to talk, and you pass them up the object.
We used to use feather.
Yeah, we used to make them in the art shop. Monique gave me a feather, right, for that. Something symbolic. It's just it's a non-threatening. Red spots are could be confrontation. The talking circle isn't confrontation. Drill questions are not confrontation. Right? Confront, again, remember this, with face. We face each other, we confront the situation with each other under the honest intent of making things better. Okay? All our circles are done with the honest intention of helping people, not playing games with them, right? And our words are very powerful. Okay, static. Everybody's familiar with, it means that not static like radio station static. Static meaning staying the same. It's the same group of people meeting every week. All right? When I was a student, one time we were given motions, and I gave some motion to me and 5 other people had to meet every night at the pavilion, right? This was during the summer at about 8 o'clock, and we had to talk about our day. We'd sit at the pavilion, right? This was at Desert Willow at the time. And we'd sit out there, and we'd just share our day, and then we'd go to bed. It's been 1 hour every day. interrupt my routine. But then that became part of our new routine. And it was pretty cool. This is the Vista Pavilion, where they do, it's actually a medicine wheel, right? Down by the creek, there's actually a creek behind it. When I was little. So everybody's adopted, we go to group with each other. Another motion, I didn't think of this, in fact I hated it at first, like, man, you gotta put me on blast over this, I'm already feeling less than. But actually we really helped each other. So it was a staff group, in addition to what you guys call lodge, that I go to every week for a couple hours in the evening, right? And everybody would talk about, how it affected me. It affected our life and how hard it was for us to connect to people. And all the ways we used it as a way to distance ourselves from people too, right? So they could be on anything if you got, almost like a commonality group, right? Which is going to come flashing up here too. But it was the same thing. People get to know each other. So there's a lot of partners. There's little Regina, a good friend. That's in the trailers at Donovan. That was, the chairs look familiar? Tell you, man, these are indestructible. Indestructible. This was in the early days of Donovan. Right? 200 guys do the same thing we do here. Sharing a 1,000-man yard. We had 200 of the 1,000. And they talk about everything, being molested, sins against humanity, hopelessness, wanting a way out of the belly of the beast. Right? You see how tight the circle is? You can see how it was kind of softened up. Baby D's picture behind the Gina. Right? Different quotes on the board. And everything was right in these two double wide shoulders. Okay, commonality groups. It's everything somebody has in common. Okay? So commonality kind of turns into, it could be either or, but commonality you specifically put to people, before the prison projects, the commonality group at the first amity was anybody that did prison time. And that's where I and others learned about, wow, okay, they actually helped everybody that was going to go. We didn't know it at the time. But by listening to these guys, we had guys from the Santa Fe prison riots, which is still one of the most violent, they didn't know where to send these guys when they got out. I mean, they were in that riot beheading people. They came to Hammond. And then they talked about that experience. And helped people decades later. Okay? Everybody had been raped. All right? That's a commonality group. There's that kinship over something horrible. That people, right? Peter goes to a commonality group with vets, that into Vietnam. All right, where they have that kinship. Or you get the parents struggling like, oh my God, now my kids, how do I reunite with them after all this? How do we fix it? How do we put Humpty Dumpty back together again? Because I'm changing and I want them to forgive me, trust me again. You got to dance that whole dance. It takes a while. Well, commonality groups are good. Okay, floor groups. These are slip groups. You guys know what a slip group is? Okay. It's kind of here and now issues. You're not going to go deep. Right? These are, here, I'll give you a theoretical. Shoot. It's already, okay, the curriculum coordinator, remember, community is method, resident run. We have a whole student council here, village structure, reconciliation, remembrance. The curriculum coordinators, through their motivators, through the week, are noticing issues, right? Hey, JoJo and these two roommates are having issues. Boom. Or this one and that one got in a confrontation, right? Or you as a student say, hey, I'd like to be in a group with Robert. I think he's a cool dude. Put me in whatever group Robert's in, right? Or hey, I want to get with my time peers, my peer group, the people that came in with me and who I'm going to be leaving here about the same time, right? I want my peer group. You write it on a slip of paper, right? Usually they design a little cool looking slip of paper. Then the curriculum coordinators get together, just like we do in the workshop, right? Put people's names and slips on 3x5 cards. They build the groups for that evening, and they announce them in group call-offs, slip groups, and even gatherings for that night. Okay? And whoever calls off the circle, it could be kind of humorous, good. They got to know everybody in the community, right? And they go off to their group. But you do this. Again, it's kind of a red spotty, get your issues out, right? Or it could be, like I mentioned, somebody want to be a group. But it's good on our level because it shows the students are taking responsibility for their own personal growth. So the call groups, the slip groups are powerful. The schedule groups should be a kind of the compliant client. Okay, I'm going to go. I have to go over here. I got to go to math class. I'm going to get in trouble, right? But when they start calling math class and setting it up, then you go, aha! Now they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. They're taking ownership, proprietorship. Because remember, we're not here to fix anybody. We set the stage for personal growth. Okay? All the time. So watch out, because we all like to help people. Me too, right? And they'll hook you into doing their work. It's like, whoa, you got to step back and go, well, wait a minute. How are you going to solve this problem? How are you going to use the tools of community to handle it? Right? Why are you running the meeting? Did you go to your coordinator? Did you go to your chief motivator? Did you go to the curriculum coordinator? The community? Why are you running straight up to me? Right? Okay? So we guide them to the tools and that's community's method, right? Same with the circles. So that's a good thing if they're calling circles. Okay, so the physical environment, that's why after every lodge you empty your trash, you leave it there you found it. It's a tight circle like you saw Gina's circle. Okay, it adds to the whole. Remember, presentation's half the meal. If it looks good, it's probably going to taste good. All right, if the room's nice, you guys have been drilled on this. I think even our newest faculty is learning this. I've walked through, Will's room, Lena's room. It's tight. Okay, so I want to bore everybody. Then how many people? Okay. See, this room isn't a good room to do small circles.
It's too big, too many chairs.
It's too big. You won't get that synergy going. If it's over 12, it's a forum. Then you got to put a tap in. It flips the energy. Right? It flips the energy. Okay, so there's a lot of thought. Okay, when you guys plan the next workshop, okay, I was talking to Antoinette today, right? I'm sure Barry will chime in and Arnold when he gets back. It's like, okay, what's the configurations going to be? Because the combinations are infinite. Want to do lodge, want to do co-ed, you want to do old people, young people, right? People that have, one time we had all these guys in every group and women. They would never talk. They were all in different groups. They were the silent ones. They were like, they might have well just been an avatar sitting there that looked like them. So we pulled them out of every group and gave them their own group. They talked. They had no problem. But with the high verbals, it just was not for them. It always stuck in my head. So I'm telling you this story 35 years later. I said, wow. So the commonalities and combinations are infinite.